Parshas Naso. I dedicate this shir l'zecher nishmas, my maternal grandfather, Reb Socher Dov HaKohen Koenigsberg. Benjamin Koenigsberg, he was a very active leader in the Jewish community in New York at the turn of the century, of the 20th century, and was among the founders of the Young Israel movement. We also joined Kli Yakar in praying for a successful conclusion to the conflict with our enemies. So, Parshas Naso has several topics. One of the difficulties in Parshas Naso is that its length is largely due to a repetition of the korbanos, of the offerings that the various Nesi'im, the princes of the 12 tribes, brought at the dedication of the Mishkan, and the Mizbeach, and the altar in the tabernacle. They were identical. And this is problematic that each one is specified. There isn't just one summary of this is the offering that they brought, but rather they all brought the same offering, and each one is specified by name. So we have the same package is mentioned 12 times. There's I'm reading now from Yom HaRishon, which is Perek Zayin Pasuk Yud Beis, that's 7:12. And the one who brought his korban the first day was Naso ben Aminadav, the Matei Yehuda. We are familiar with Naso ben Aminadav. The Medrash relates that he is the first one to have jumped into the Red Sea to have it split. Okay, so v'korbano kares kesef achash shloshim u'mayam mishkalam mizor kachad kesef shivim shekel b'shekel hakodesh shnehem elim soles mincha belula b'shem lemincha. So there are silver vessels that contain grain, and then kaf achas zarav melei katoras parachad ben bakar aylachad kevas achad ben shasol Allah. So we have a cow, we have a ram, we have a sheep, sir zimachad chatos, and then there's a goat, and then lezevach hashlamim bakar shnayim. Many animals with precise numbers, and this formula is repeated over and over and over again 12 times. It's not summarized, it's repeated. So the question is, why is that? As a matter of fact, you can see that here we have in most Chumashim, you have the Parish of Rashi, and then once you get to the description of the Siyam, of the prince's offerings, the repetitive description, you no longer have Rashi, because Rashi's got nothing to say. He said it all. If there was anything to say, he said it all already. So the most obvious question is, why? Why the repetition? Especially we have a Masorah, you have a tradition. The Almighty dictated the Torah word to word to Moshe, and there isn't a single extra word, there isn't even a single extra letter. And Chazal extract meaning from every apparent repetition. Why the obvious repetition here? So that's the question writ large. Now let's rewind a bit and talk about what the topics leading up to those korbanos are. So first we have both a count and an assignment of tasks to Bnei Levi, the children of Levi, and they are Gershon, Merari, and Kahas. So Gershon, the family of Gershon, was to carry all of these, Gershon, Kahas, and Merari, all carry the different kelim, the different vessels of the Mishkan. The Bnei Gershon, the family of Gershon, carried the cloths and the coverings and the drapes, and the Merari, Bnei Merari, carried the planks and the bars and the posts and the sockets that made up the Mishkan, and the Kahas carried the most sacred objects, the Aron, etc. So each of the families had separate tasks. So this is in contrast to the Nesi'im, to the princes of the tribes who brought identical korbanos. We see that the families of the children of Levi had individual tasks. Okay, now we have the potentially distressing description of what happens with a certain type of adulteress. She is known as the Sota, and she is suspected by her husband. Her husband suspects her of adulterous activity, certain conditions, and she is administered certain solution to drink, and if she in fact committed the sin, it will kill her, and if she hasn't, then she will be well and perhaps pregnant and receive other blessings and shalom bayis, etc. And that's followed by Nazir. Nazir is a prescription for a type of asceticism, of withdrawal from physical pleasures. And a Nazir has to desist from any product of grape, not just wine, grape juice, the actual grape itself from the peel to the pits, the pits to the peel. He cannot. He's not allowed to shave or cut his hair, and he's not allowed to be matame himself. He can't defile himself and make himself spiritually unclean, even for a relative who dies. There are many details that we won't go into now, but the basic notion is that the Nazir takes upon himself a whole series of restrictions that are not applicable to the ordinary observant Jew. And Rashi quotes one of the rationales for the juxtaposition, because the description of Nazir could have come anywhere that the Almighty determined that it made sense. And why does it follow sota? So Rashi says that somebody who is kol haroa sota b'kukulo yazer atzmo min hayayin. Somebody sees a sota, the adulterous woman, in her disgrace, meaning while she's being administered the punishment, so he should swear off wine. And Chazal give numerous reasons for that, and the Meforshim give numerous reasons. But among them is that somebody who has never been exposed to this type of licentious behavior, and even though what he's seeing is actually the punishment for it, but it went, this category of behavior went from being not even manageable to actually real, in that this individual knows someone who engaged in it. So Kli Yakar mentions several reasons why these type of restrictions specifically. He says that wine tends to blur lines. And following the Parsha of Sota, it's important to maintain lines. It also involves separation, hafrasha, which likewise is something that is salutary after exposure to inappropriate behavior. And also it creates a unique type of intensity in closeness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, Chazal give us, I wouldn't say mixed messages in the sense of necessarily conflicting, but different types of messages. First of all, the Torah calls him a kadosh, and the Chazal say that he's called a Nazir. Nazir is one word for a crown, so it implies that he's wearing a Keser Malchus, the Ebenezer says. In other words, he's achieved a certain level of spiritual greatness. And on the other hand, the Gemara says that he's Nikra Chote, he's considered to be a sinner, and that's why he brings a Korban Chatas, a sin offering, because it's Ki'ilu Bana Bama La'atzmo. It's as though he built for himself a private altar. So what exactly does that mean? So some say it means that the standard conventional type of service to the Almighty wasn't sufficient for him. And we see that there is a conflict. Is he a kadosh? Is he holy? Is he a chote? Is he a sinner? And you could say that there are actually elements of both. The Nazir may go through an intense period of withdrawal from the material world and end up being closer to the Almighty, but that is clearly not the preferred method, or the method that the Almighty prefers for servicing him. He says, Kosev Orchus B'nai Yisrael, which comes in the midst of all this, which is the Berachas Kohanim, and he says that the Kohanim are supposed to say to the B'nai Yisrael, Yevorechacha Hashem v'yishmerecha, Yevorecha, may he bless you, and Chazal say that means, may he bless you with material plenty. And the implication is that the Jew is called upon to master the physical world, not to withdraw from it. Perhaps most importantly, what we see here is not one size fits all. There is not only room for, but necessity sometimes for assigning roles. And sometimes in our society, we see people have a difficulty with that. We see people have a difficulty with being assigned roles, especially on the basis of gender. And that's an issue which percolates and which has to be addressed in a genuine way, and an authentic way, and an honest way. And then we see that people are called upon to express themselves uniquely as individuals, and the Nazir does that, but there's a danger in doing that, because when you do that, you remove yourself from the klal. And a bama, it says, Kilu bana bama latzmo, it's as though he built his own private altar. A bama is a private altar. It's a one-man show. And that's the risk of being an ascetic or taking on other types of unconventional practices, is that you separate yourself from the klal. And we see from the korbanos of the korbanos of the Nesi'im, of the princes, that in the eyes of the Almighty, even if what you bring to the table is identical to that which everyone else brings, despite the fact that, according to Ramban, each of the Nesiim had his own unique motivation and calculation in determining what he was bringing. And we each are urged to find that which is unique about ourselves, our unique Tselem Elokim, and to identify our strengths and to use them to fulfill the mission of contributing uniquely. But sometimes that unique contribution is actually not unique in the sense that others are doing it as well. And not only is that okay, but we learn that what the most important thing is not that we express our difference. The most important thing is that we contribute and that we participate in that which is Kodesh. Sometimes it is different, and sometimes it's just like everybody else. In the eyes of the Almighty, that is supremely important. Your individual contribution is supremely important, even if it is just like everyone else's. Have a good Shabbos.